Hello and welcome to this video, which is designed to give teachers of geography the best out of their use of Exampro. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be giving you a few hints and tips that you might have missed on how to use Exampro most effectively to save you time. So the first thing that happens when you get to Exampro is you see the gatekeeper, and this is our list of subjects. I've got a lot of subjects because there's a lot that Exampro offers. So to drill down to geography, I can click on this button on the left hand side and then I just get geography there. Now you notice that there are two different tabs up the top, one for the current year and one for the archive. The current year is the questions that have been chosen that match the new specification exactly, so in content or in type of question. The archive is all of the questions that we've offered in the past specifications. Now they're there for two reasons. One, if you've got recent candidates or anyone who's redoing the old specs, then you can use those. But they're also there if you want to use a topic that, for example, has come off the new specification, but you know that there's a question there that would help to extend your students' knowledge, then you can get to those questions in the archive. If I go into the new specification question bank, then there are 566 questions in the question bank. Sometimes it's interesting to know where those questions come from. So if we go to the search button and then go to content, we can see that we go all the way back to the three specifications that existed in 2006. And you'll notice that there are certain questions from the first paper in 2006 in Spec A that we feel are still relevant to the papers today. And the questions that are missing obviously would be in the legacy archive. If I reset my searches, the next thing, if you want to know where a question comes from, then you can look at this. You press the little question ID button that's here, and then you get this code next to each one. Now at first they look a bit impenetrable, but actually they're quite easy to understand. So these are the specimen papers at the beginning, and then as you go further down the list, you go back in time. So we're going to get to Spec A from 2014, Paper 1 Foundation, Question 2A, for example. So you can see where the questions came from in the first place. Now, one thing that people don't know about is that you can do additive searches. That means searching more than one thing at a time. So if I reset my search and say I'm teaching about tectonic hazards, so I will need to go into living with the physical environment, tectonic hazards. Now there's 47 questions there in tectonic hazards. And I've got a high ability group, let's say. So I can then, I've got now 15 questions on tectonic hazards with at a high demand level. I could then also look at the fact that they're not so good at their levels marking type questions, so I can look at which questions are levels marking questions, and there's 13 questions there. So I can pull them together and choose which ones of those I want to use for my particular group. Like that. I can then export that to print, to PDF, which is the easiest way of printing and having a really nice layout. Or I could go to Word, where I could edit it, change the stimulus, or take out the answer lines. I can also save my document and I can share it, which I'll show you in a second. What I can do then is I can click on the high demand and change that to low demand. So now maybe I'm building up a paper. I want to put in some questions low demand just to start the paper off, and some standard demand questions in the middle there. So I can change individual ones of these searches by clicking on each of the buttons at the top. I can then reset the whole search if I want to. Now I've now got a test on tectonic hazards, which I can save to my online library. What you'll notice is that down here I've got a share button. This link here can be shared with your students, and if you put in this URL, which is always 8 letters plus .exampro.net, your students will be able to see the questions that you've just shared, put together. That's really useful because it means that you can share your questions with your students without them having to print. They can see these on smartphones and things. They can't answer them online, but they can use them and then answer them in their books as you wish them to. If I go back to Exampro, what I can then later do is I can share the mark scheme, for example. So I go back to my document and refresh my document, then the mark schemes have now appeared, so I get them to mark their own work. That's a really useful little hint. This link will remain constant as long as your document has been saved in your library, and to find your library you go up here and you can get it there. Oh, it's already open, so I can't open it now. And while it's there, you can share that link. Please feel free to share that link within your classroom or within your school, on your VLE, on worksheets or whatever. Please don't put it on the internet. If you put those those links on the internet, then students find them, and you're starting to share all those questions with students across the country, and that's not so great for any teachers who want to keep some questions back. So please only share that within your school, and obviously do not share Exampro login details, because students immediately put them on the student room, and then everyone's using your login and you can't use them yourself, and all the questions are no longer secure. Another thing you can do in Exampro that's quite useful is you can segregate questions. I was asked quite a few times by teachers, how can they check to see if they've used questions before? Now, in the future release of Exampro, we're hoping to have a flagging system where you can flag questions you've used, but there's a way of doing it up front to begin with. So the way you start is by doing your search. So if I, for example, was going to search, I'm going to teach, let's say I'm going to teach river landscapes. So there's 35 questions on river landscapes in this optional section. What I can do is I've chosen the top question there, and then I can go down the bottom, and I've got my finger on the shift button, and I click on the bottom and I highlight all of the questions in there. And you notice that this little plus sign has just appeared underneath. I can then click the plus sign and then get all my questions. All my 35 questions have now gone into my document. You can do that with up to 60 questions at a time. If I then add a new blank document, what I can do is I can start to look through my questions and segregate them. So I can say I want that question for my topic test. I'll leave that one. I'll have one of those. And I'll have that one. So I've put together my little topic test. I can save that as river test, save that, and I can save this one as river class, save that, and then I know I can use all of these questions within my class without any fear of them going in the topic test. That's really useful to do, especially if you're sharing classes with, or you've got more than one teacher, because that means that you can make sure that no one uses the questions within the topic test. You do that up front, it takes you a few minutes, and it's much safer. The other thing, of course, is that you could then give your students this link, which would give them a revision bundle of questions that they can use before the test to revise ready for the test without seeing any of the questions you've put in your test. So that's a really helpful little thing to do. Now, supposing I've started a new, I've gone to a new school, and the section that they've decided to teach is glacial landscapes, and I've never taught that before, so I'm a bit scared of that. So I don't know how to what the common misconceptions are, what the problems that the students have. So if I go to glacial landscapes, what you'll notice once you get past the specimen questions is that we've also got the examiner's reports. Now, if you've ever tried to use examiner's reports as they're published by exam boards, they tend to be very long, verbose documents that don't really have much relevant to your immediate teaching. However, if you use them in Exampro, it's much, much more helpful. So I'm about to start this topic. I'm going to my questions that are in Exampro in that area. I can then click on the examiner's reports and I can start to see where the issues that people have. So second tomes were more familiar and they were able to define them. Responses were good because candidates used the map and linked this to a reason, so I can start to build up a picture of ways that people can increase their abilities in exams. Fewer identified building correctly than abrasion. So there's obviously an issue there that you could work with your students, and so on and so forth. You can work through these and start to see where problems occur. Many sketches did not resemble the profile given in the picture, so make sure when you're looking at a question like this and they're doing a sketch that you're instructing the kids that they have to follow the profile of the picture. Those sort of things really help. Right, so I hope this has been a helpful little video and that you've got some hints and tips and you can get your best out of Exampro. Thank you very much.